We had previously done our roll call vote, but I want to take this opportunity while people are here to say that we have a new member with us tonight, Mr. Thomas Talbert, who's right here for now, and we want to thank him. And he had his first executive session, and he talked in that, so it's wonderful. We're going to be delighted to have him with us. So good to see you tonight, Mr. Talbert.
Thank you very much.
Our next item of business is introduction of the consensus agenda. Okay. There are 9 items for consideration, and the first group will be the items that we are all able to vote on. So we have A, the approval of the minutes of April 13th, 2016 regular session. Could we have a motion on that? Okay, Mrs. Burns.
So moved.
Second, Mrs. Broussard. Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Our next item is the approval of a donation from Reading Cooperative Bank. I think the superintendent could explain this to us.
Yes, be happy
Very nice.
to. Yes. Actually heard from Nancy Brown, our good friend at Reading Cooperative Bank, last week that Reading Cooperative Bank has donated $1,000 to Wilmington Public Schools to provide the subsidies to families who need financial assistance to purchase Chromebooks. So Mr. Ruggiero is in the process of creating a gift and donation account, which will hold these funds as well as the funds that we received from Mr. Quinn. And so that brings the total up to $6,000 available for funding for families who might not be able to afford or afford the full cost of the Chromebooks. So really, really excited. And Ms. Brown came by the office last week and took a little photo op. So with one of the big checks, she didn't let me keep the big check, but it did keep the little check, which is the one that matters.
I always wondered what they did with those big
They
checks.
wiped them off and filled them in again.
Now we know.
So we're very, very appreciative to Reading Cooperative Bank for this generous
How
donation.
many books does this buy?
So essentially 4 equivalent, $250
Each
essentially for each Chromebook, including the Chromebook, the Google software
Okay.
license.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the donation from Reading Cooperative Bank in the amount of $1,000. Mr. Talbert, second.
Yep.
Thank you. Second, Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? Unanimous, Kim. Thank you. Our next items would be warrant G420, warrant G421, warrant R220, R221, warrant L39, and warrant FS25. Mrs. Broussard.
So moved.
Thank you. Mrs. Bonish.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous. Then now we come down to, let me see. Okay. Payroll warrant for 4/13/2016. Mr. Bjork. Mrs. Burns?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? This would be 5 in favor, 1 abstain. Mrs. Kane. Okay. Warrant CB13. Mrs. Bonish, thank you. Mr. Bjork, all those in favor? Okay, that would be 5 in favor and 1 abstain, Mrs. Burns. And then warrant SPED 21. Mr. Bjork,
Second.
and second, Mr. Talbert. Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. That would be 5 in favor and 1 abstain, Mrs. Burns. And we did it. Thank you very much. And our next item of business would be the student representative report. Dina, nice to
Hello.
see you again.
Nice to see everyone today. It's a nice crowd today. Hello, everyone. And I'd like to introduce the past things that have happened because I'm doing a past-present theme right now. So the past things that have happened during April vacation were 2 field trips. A trip to Costa Rica, which enhanced, the people who went there enhanced their knowledge of the language Spanish and its culture, actually. And there was a second trip, the World War II trip to Poland, Germany, and France, and they enhanced their knowledge of the historical events and the significance of it. And when I thought about it, it felt like how tourists come to Boston to learn about the Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere, the Freedom Trail. So they did the exact same thing, and they went to a different country and learned about it. So it's kind of a different perspective about it. You go in a different country and learning about it. So that was pretty cool to think about putting that in perspective. And now we're jumping to the present, which is happening right now, which is 2 clubs, their recent activity. First off is Environmental Club. They're having a raffle to promote awareness for Earth Day, which passed, but we can still celebrate it every single day. Every single day is Earth Day, which they are trying to push out, and as well as recycling. And their raffle is, you get a raffle, you don't have to buy it. All you have to do is recycle something in front of them to earn a raffle. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. At the end of the raffle week, which is at the end of this week, they'll draw 3 tickets, and the prizes will be eco-friendly prizes, such as a build-your-own-garden kit, a Starbucks recyclable cup, and an eco-friendly lunchbox as well. I've seen the prizes. They're pretty cool. And second, the Local Heroes Club, and they've been conducting a donation in which they collect donated hygiene products to send to wounded vets and military that is serving overseas right now. And this is actually ties into my theme of kindness, and that's why I have a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, which is, "The simplest acts of kindness are by far more powerful than 1,000 heads bowing in prayer."
That's very nice.
Yes. And bonus, I have something else. See, I have something else. I'm so creative. See, the WHS Drama Guild will be performing Cats as their spring production. In light of this upcoming production, which will absolutely exceed our expectations, we will have a special preview production performance from the Cats. Cast. It's very tongue twister. Cast. Jeez. Cast. Try saying that like 3 times fast. Cast. Oh, I can't do it. So that is going to be a special treat for us today. Yes.
So I think we're just waiting for them to transition here.
Right.
So in the meantime, if you want me to proceed with the superintendent's report while we're
Oh, all right, that would be great.
ready. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe they're here.
They're
Oh,
quiet if
they're
they're
We
here.
like
Yes.
to be fashionably late. That's in right now.
It's typical of
Yeah.
a cat.
Yeah. That's right.
I think I
Alright,
see.
look at
they're
their
here.
I
schedule.
think something's coming. Whoa. Robert, you didn't want to join the singing?
I prefer off camera.
We have you.
Are these all cats?
Yep.
We have you.
From the flipping of this? Oh,
We
this
have you
was,
here. These microphones right here. They're, the microphones are
Oh,
here.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone spread out. Fill the room, fill the room, fill the room.
Oh, okay.
Use the whole stage.
Some over here.
Robert, there's nowhere to go. Sorry about that.
Be a part of the series.
I just don't want to be in the litter box.
But
Are we ready? 5, 6, 7, 8.
Practical cats, dramatical cats, pragmatical cats, fanatical cats, oratorical cats, delphic-oracle cats, skeptical cats, dyspeptical cats, romantical cats, pedantical cats, critical cats, parasitical cats, allegorical cats, metaphorical cats, statistical cats, and mystical cats,
much as to say, well, now, how about that?
How about that?
Do I actually see with my own very eyes a man who's not good? A jellicle cat. What's a jellicle cat?
What's a jellicle cat? What's a jellicle cat? What's a jellicle cat?
So thank you all for watching. We are the cast of Cats the Musical. Our show goes up May 19th, 20th, and then 21st. So that's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I think it's 3 weeks from now. They're all at 7 o'clock, all 3 nights, and then the ticket prices are $15 for adults, $12 for students and senior citizens, and I think that's it.
Wonderful. Wonderful job. Nice job.
Excellent. Definitely be there. We've never had this happen before at the school committee meeting. So it's wonderful, and we'll be glad in your next production to have you come back. But your productions have been so outstanding, and we all, as well as the people in the town, truly thank you for your talent and for sharing it with us all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Back to rehearsal.
Wow, very good. So cute. I am glad it's the superintendent's report now after that, and not us.
This always happens to me.
I still want to know what the jellicle cat is.
Get dinner?
Gotta go to the show.
On the show?
We need a microphone.
I know, that was wonderful. Wonderful. All right, superintendent's report.
Best advertising I could have possibly asked for, right? So definitely looking forward to the Cats performance. It's a huge show, you know, and people perform all sorts of different shows, but the Cats is pretty significant, so it's quite an undertaking, so very proud of them. Just a couple things. First of all, the STEM fair is Thursday night from 6 to 8. Apologize, there's been a few advertised times, but I can assure you it is 6 to 8 at the Wilmington Middle School in the cafeteria, so we're really excited for that. It's always a great and well-attended event. And then National Honor Society induction will also be on Thursday night at 7 o'clock p.m. here at the high school auditorium. If you're planning to attend, we're happy to cone off some spots, because I know some of you will be transitioning quickly from STEM night to induction, so we'll take care of that for you. And then on Saturday, we have annual town meeting that begins at 10:30 a.m. here at the high school auditorium, and hoping for a quick quorum. Yes. The Behavioral Health Provider Fair is on May 12th. We have begun advertising. We thank Mrs. Fiddler for a really awesome poster that she put together for us, and that's starting to be distributed and advertised throughout the community, and the local press has been helpful as well in getting the word out about that. And just one final thing, we had our 4th District Advisory Council meeting yesterday. And that is it's a fantastic group. I know Mrs. Broussard is part of that group. We, somehow our focus has evolved over these 4 meetings to focus on family and community, family and parent and family engagement, really. And we issued a survey, and we intend at a future school committee meeting to share the results of the survey on parent and family engagement. We had just under 600 responses to the survey, which is a pretty good response rate, about 20%, which is a good response rate. So we...
How was it put out there?
We put that out, we sent it out via Blackboard Connect to all the parents with a link to the survey done on SurveyMonkey. We also had a link on our website, on our Facebook page, and we tweeted that out as well. So lots of opportunities and several occasions kind of reminded folks about that as well. So we'll provide those, but I think some really great discussions and some really great takeaways, and a handful of really great ideas about work that we can do as a district advisory council moving forward into next year, specifically on promoting parent and family engagement in our schools. And if you read the research, you may not think initially that it has a big impact on student achievement, student learning, but it actually has a tremendous impact. So we'll look forward to our work together on that.
I just want to make a comment about the town meeting. I was contacted by Beverly Dalton that we have 5 warrant articles at the town meeting, and the chairperson, whoever that may be, will be presenting those, and if they need discussion, then that person gives up his or her time to the superintendent to be able to answer any questions. So the superintendent and that person would be there at the meeting by a microphone.
Sure.
On that day, so.
Happy to give up my time to the school committee member. I'm told by Mr. Hull that those motions will be delivered to our office sometime tomorrow, so we'll have those in hand for whomever will be reading those motions.
Excellent. So we hope that everybody is there to support these during that time, to support those. Thank you. Very good. All right. Old business. None. Okay. New business is the school committee reorganization. And before we start of how to reorganize, I just wanted to make a comment that I have been privileged to be the chairperson for many a year, and I have appreciated so much your support of me and how things have gone. I think we've come a long way. We're doing well, and it's time for somebody else to take over, and I'm sure that person will have some good new ideas, or might support some of the same things we've been doing. But in any case, I'm a very happy person. I am glad to have people step forward and be able to do this job and the other 2 positions. I've asked not to be, I really don't want to be one of the positions. I'm going to sit in the side and be here. I'm going to be here still. But I think we need to share positions, and I think it's going to be a great year coming up. And so I'm very happy for however this works out. I just want people to know. Okay. And thank you for everything. Okay.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
This is my favorite part. Hold the gavel. So the reorganization process, just to run through the process, members will call out members in alphabetical order, and each position will be taken one position at a time, starting with the chair. I will only be involved in that portion of the reorganization. So once the position is announced, one at a time, there will be actually 2 rounds of voting. So in round 1, as your name is called, if you have someone you would like to nominate for the particular position, please state the name of that individual. If you do not have a name to nominate, please say pass when your name is called. In round 2, as your name is called the second time, please say the name of the nominated person that you are choosing to vote for. If you do not agree with the nomination, please vote pass. The person with the most votes will obtain the position.
I'd like to also make one other comment. I just remembered. I'm forgetting, sorry. Mr. Mullis was unable to be here tonight, and he let us know later this afternoon, and he did not ask that we hold this reorganization. So that's why we've decided to go along with it, so that it would be done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So beginning in alphabetical order with Mr. Bjork, do you wish to nominate?
I will nominate Julie Broussard.
Mrs. Bonish.
If you don't want to nominate someone else, you say pass.
Pass.
Mrs. Broussard.
Pass.
Mrs. Burns.
Pass.
Mrs. Kane.
Pass.
Mr. Mullis is not in attendance. Mr. Talbot.
Mrs. Broussard.
Okay, so looks like we have consensus here. The only nominee for the position is Mrs. Broussard, but I think as a matter of procedure, we will still go ahead and take the vote. So you're voting here, and if you say the name of Mrs. Broussard, you're essentially casting your vote for Mrs. Broussard as the chairperson for the Wilmington School Committee. So beginning with Mr. Bjork.
Mrs. Broussard.
Mrs. Bonish.
Mrs. Broussard.
Mrs. Broussard.
I guess I'm voting for myself.
Mrs. Burns.
Mrs. Broussard.
Mrs. Kane.
Mrs. Broussard.
Mr. Mullis is absent. Mr. Talbot?
Mrs. Broussard.
Okay, so Mrs. Broussard.
And here's your Robert's Rules of Order.
Congratulations.
Inside here, Mrs.
Thank you,
Broussard.
I think. Turn the gavel over. Switch seats.
Yep, we're gonna switch seats now. Mrs. Broussard, you can take your,
I can take my nameplate?
yeah, how does it,
Yeah.
can we get you over? Okay,
Slide
great.
yours out.
All right, thank you.
Hello. Change of scenery.
How do I get to you? You need mine. Oh, okay.
I'll use mine.
Okay. Here it is. Oh, thank you very much.
There's no money in it.
Oh, here it is, thank you.
Not anymore.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Talbot.
Not anymore, no. Definitely not. No, don't worry about me. I know, I got two linebackers on each side of me now. Nobody mess with me now.
Before we continue to the next round, I just wanted to, on behalf of myself and the school committee, recognize this very auspicious occasion and your very significant 10 years of continuous
It was
service?
9 years,
9 years
yeah.
of continuous service to this committee as the chairperson. Myself personally, I just have to thank you for the last 2 years of serving with you. Your support has been instrumental to my success in this role, and I can't say anything, I can't emphasize that strongly enough, how much your support has meant to me. So on behalf of all of us, we'd just like to present you with this nice bouquet to brighten up your home. Wonderful spring.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I feel like a queen or a princess. Thank you so much, that's beautiful. I appreciate it, and Mary, you're easy to support. Now, Mrs. Broussard,
Round two.
good luck.
Round two, okay.
Vice Chair.
All right, and I start with
Mr. Bjork.
Mr. Bjork. I start with Mr. Bjork. Okay, so round two, we are now looking for vice chairman candidates, and I am going to start with Mr. Bjork.
Mrs. Bonish.
Mrs. Bonish.
Mr. Bjork.
Mrs. Broussard. I can pass. Okay, I'm going to pass.
Pass.
Mrs. Burns.
What Ms. Burns said.
Pass.
Mrs. Burns said pass. Mrs. Kane.
This is tough. My first tough decision. Mr. Bjork.
Mr. Mullis is not here. Mr. Talbot.
Mr. Bjork.
Okay.
So you're just going to read them, and they can vote for the person they want.
Okay. So, excuse my disorganization here for starting off. Okay, I'm just going to go down the list alphabetically, and we will vote for our candidates as we see fit. Mr. Bjork.
Mr. Bjork.
Mrs. Bonish.
Mr. Bjork.
Mrs. Broussard. Going with Mr. Bjork. Mrs. Burns.
Mr. Bjork.
Mrs. Kane.
Mr. Bjork.
Mr. Mullis is not here. Mr. Talbot.
Mr. Bjork.
Mr. Bjork. Okay, Mr. Bjork it is for vice
Do I
chair.
get a smaller gavel?
Yes. Okay. All right, and moving right along for our position of secretary. Again, starting alphabetically, Mr. Bjork,
Mrs. Bonish.
Mrs. Bonish,
Pass.
Mrs. Broussard, Bonish, Mrs. Burns,
Pass.
Mrs. Kane,
Yes.
pass. Mr. Mullis is not here. Mr. Talbot,
Mrs. Bonish.
Mrs. Bonish. Okay. All right, and now for voting, Mr. Bjork,
Mrs. Bonish.
Mrs. Bonish,
Oh.
Mrs. Broussard, Bonish, Mrs. Burns,
Bonish.
Mrs. Kane.
Mrs. Bonish.
Mr. Mullis is not here. Mr. Talbot?
Mrs. Bonish.
Okay. Ginny Bonish is our new secretary. Great. Thank you. You are reorganized. We are officially reorganized. Yes, you can. Okay, now we are going to have a presentation from the West Intermediate School. I think we've got a large contingent here who will be presenting on the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions pilot program that they've been conducting in their building. They're going to be sharing with us a PowerPoint presentation, and the slides are also in our packet. And I believe, yeah,
Are we reorganizing the committees?
The what?
the committees.
At the end, under committees?
Okay, all right. Oh, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, no worries.
And I believe we had a team that presented recently at a Blue Ribbon Conference.
Yes.
Excellent.
Just introduce Mr. Shaw, principal of the West Intermediate School, and he can introduce his team. And yes, they did actually, I do have to brag on their behalf. So they they did present at Blue Ribbon, and they had a nice little room for them. And quickly, the room was overflowing, and we tried to get more chairs in the room, and quickly realized that we were exceeding capacity of the room, and quickly changed the location from a classroom to the actual library at Reading Memorial High School. And I think you had at least 70 or 80 people in attendance, and very, very engaged and excited about this presentation. They did an excellent job, and they're going to give you a little taste of that right here. And they actually, I should say, also are presenting this summer at the MASS Executive Institute as well.
Thank you.
Excellent,
I know
thank
it's
you.
not dancing that we talked about earlier. That was fascinating parliamentary procedure to watch, by the way. I've never seen that before, so that was pretty cool. So, and congratulations to everybody. Thank you. Earlier this year, I was here, when we presented our school improvement plans and talked briefly about our opportunity in front of us, to pilot the CPS program. And this is, now it's getting towards the end of the year, and these are the faces of the people who have actually done this, and it's been fabulous. It's a fabulous team. I thank you for the opportunity to bring this program, to the West and into Wilmington. This is Catherine Mayella, fourth grade teacher. She's on the pilot team. Bethany Dion, school psychologist. She's the driving force of the pilot team. Kelly Sullivan, special education teacher on the pilot team. Kristen White, fourth grade teacher on the pilot team. Heidi Kyogan, fifth grade teacher on the pilot team. Unable to make it tonight were Michelle Levesque, fourth grade teacher on the pilot team, and Marissa Bellio, the school psychologist from the middle school. She actually joined us, every Tuesday. It's been a great experience. I think the best thing to do first is just let maybe Bethany just walk us quickly through a PowerPoint. It's like a 6-slide PowerPoint, not a big deal, just to give you some background, and then we'll answer any questions you have about it, and then we'll go from there. All right, Bethany, if you don't mind.
We should thank Bethany, who's actually on maternity leave with a 7-week-old,
8 weeks.
8-week-old child at
Today,
home.
8 weeks today.
Appreciate you coming out to be here.
No problem. I believe all, if not most of you, have read Lost at School. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview of what Collaborative and Proactive Solutions is. If you want to go to the next slide. So the philosophy of CPS is kids do well if they can, and that's really it's a mindset change, that when you take that mindset on and you really believe that kids do well if they can, this becomes a really easy model to implement. But that's a tricky thing to really change our what a lot of our beliefs are, and that if we just push that child harder and motivate them more, they'll do better because they're not doing well because they don't want to, and we need to make them want to. And that's not the case. It's kids do well if they can. And so what we have been practicing is figuring out what it is that is getting in the way of kids doing well when they're not doing well, and how can we work with that with the children and support them moving forward to be able to do well. So when a child has difficulty, that's when the demands that are being placed on the child don't match up with what their skills are. So again, our goal is to figure out what are those skills that they're lacking. and how can we work with the student to support them moving forward so that they can meet those demands, that they have those skills and can meet those demands, or do we need to change our demands, understanding that their skills may not be where they need to be in order to meet that demand. So when a child's skills don't meet the demands that are being placed upon them, we have unsolved problems. And CPS says there are 3 ways that we solve problems: Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. Plan A is the most commonly used method of addressing unsolved problems, and it's the least effective. This is when we are solving the problem unilaterally. So an adult is saying, this is what you're going to do and how you're going to solve it, without really working with the child to figure out his or her point of view, or what he or she may see the problem being. So this may be, okay, you didn't bring your homework in, you lose recess, and that's going to solve the problem. Well, I think we can probably all agree that that rarely solves the problem because it's not addressing whatever the lagging skills are. I'm going to skip over Plan B for a second and come back to that. Plan C is when you set the problem aside. So you're prioritizing, saying, you know what, we have all these different unsolved problems we want to work on. We're going to set some of these aside that aren't as important right now so we can really focus on our top priority and understand that this child cannot meet these demands for whatever the problem is, and we're going to set that aside for right now. So it's not giving in, it's really just prioritizing and understanding that we can't address every problem or all of the problems at once. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on the most important at a time, and when we solve that, we can move on to the next. So Plan B is what we have been practicing. This is when you solve the problem collaboratively. So it's really working with the child to get input from the student and problem solve with the student as a team. In order to do that, the first step that we go through is the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems, or the ALSUP. And this is where, as a team of people that are working with the student, could be teachers, school psychologists, counselors, principals, parents, whoever it may be that can really help us to understand what the lagging skills are and the unsolved problems are, sit together and go through lagging skills and unsolved problems to identify those for the student. Once we have those, we really want to focus in on the top 1 to 3 unsolved problems that we feel are the most important, and the rest we're going to set aside using Plan C, with the understanding that we really need to focus on those 1 to 3 problems that we have identified as the most important. Once we've done that, then this really lays out the steps of the problem-solving plan. And both of these, both the ALSUP and this problem-solving plan, are available on the Lives in the Balance website for free. All of the material is free on the website, which is great, but these are the 2 main forms that we use. So once we have those unsolved problems, you can see at the top, you can list out your 1 to 3 problems, and then you just we follow these steps. So the next step that we would do is what's called the empathy step, where we sit down with the child and hear the child out. We present what the problem is that we've noticed or identified. And this is taking the behaviors out. We don't focus on behaviors. So we're not saying, I've noticed that when you are asked to transition to another class, you refuse to get out of your chair, you throw your book on the floor, you tip your table over, whatever it may be. We're not focusing on the behaviors. We're simply saying, I understand, or I've noticed you've had difficulty transitioning from ELA to music. What's up? Can you tell me about that? And that's how we started, really to leave it open for the student to then share with us, as opposed to kind of immediately jumping into, you're wrong, we've noticed you've done this behavior, we're going to punish you. That's not what we're looking for. We're really looking to get information from the child in a non-punitive manner, and we really make that clear. That's been a lot of what we've been practicing is how do we do that? Because as I'm sure you can imagine, when you present that question, the majority of students would probably say, I don't know. And so we have had a lot of practice working on what do you do when you get an I don't know. So once we kind of pull out that information, and this step can be anywhere from 10 minutes, some of us have had 10-minute steps, to some are still working on that step and have started in September. So it can be a very long process, and it can be a quick process. It really depends on the problem, and it depends on the student, depends on the relationship that you have. But we'll talk a little bit more about the successes that we've seen with the students we've been able to approach this with. So once we have identified what the student has identified as the problem, then we lay out again what we have identified as the problem, and work together with the student to come up with a solution that's both mutually satisfactory and realistic. Because certainly we don't want to be promising things that aren't realistic. Even if the student says, oh, this would solve all my problems, we want to make sure that it's something that we really can do, and something that's satisfactory for both parties. So that's really what we've been doing this year. It's been a really exciting process, and we've had a lot of practice. We have audio recorded our sessions with some students and sent those into our trainer, and then our trainer has been able to give us feedback. And that feedback's been given to us as a whole group, so we've really been able to learn from each other as well. And it's been invaluable to have that and to really get that feedback from a certified trainer. So no problem.
Thank you. So it's nice and tidy and neat when you talk about it like this. You know, this has been, it's been a huge commitment of time and of energy from this whole team, because we meet every Tuesday from 11:30 to 12:30. So this whole team, pretty much for the whole year, has given up, you know, like their lunch and recess. We sit and do a working lunch. You know, we had every other week sessions, you know, Skyping with the trainers. We had to make these tape recordings of students. And it can be pretty awkward having these conversations at first. You know, it's really about building up trust with kids. And the kids, sometimes are really caught off guard when you ask them that question, what's up with that? Well, nothing. There's nothing wrong. You know, and we get those things, and we learn how to ask the questions, you know, without slipping into that naturally comfortable role we all have of trying to solve a fight. Well, here's what I think is going on. It doesn't matter what I think. It's you're really trying to get the students to talk to you, you know. We've, again, I don't know if this is the right form, but like all kinds of stories we could tell you about these conversations with kids, and, you know, successes and failures. I shouldn't say failures. There have been successes that have happened quickly, as Bethany said. There are ongoing projects still, you know. And you know, I guess the bottom line is it's about establishing a trusting relationship with the child in a different way than you typically do as a teacher. And even as a parent, I've used this as a parent, you know, and you guys have read the book, you know, you're probably using some of these strategies yourselves, you know. But once the kids figure out that, okay, I can talk and I can say what's on my mind, and I'm not going to get in trouble for this, you know, I'm really going to be able to say what's on my mind, you start working forward and you work out solutions, you know. And we've had solutions that have ranged from, you know, as simple as, well, okay, maybe, you know, instead of, you know, carrying your bag into the classroom, maybe go to your locker first, and then just change the order you do things, to some more significant, you know, almost like weekly conversations and things like that, you know. So it's been a great learning experience for us. It's a great tool. It's a great way of thinking when you really take that whole thing from, you know, kids do well if they want to, and you switch it around to the kids do well if they can. It changes the way that you approach almost every situation that you deal with. And it can be academic, and it can be disciplinary. And it does get tricky, for me especially, because I still have to wear two hats, you know what I mean? And we're at a point now which is good, because the staff has all been exposed to this now. The staff knows that we're at a point where we're moving in this direction. This isn't like we're trying this once and we're walking away from it. We're gonna work this way. So the way we have it now is, you know, staff members can come to us on a Tuesday, you know, they can just drop in and, you know, I'm having a problem with a child, can one of you guys help me? They might want us to sit in with a conversation with them. You know, so it's like organically kind of growing right now, like through the staff. And I think we have like a more formal training kind of lined up for the start of the year next year. And it's worked out so well, quite frankly, that I know the middle school, I think one team there at the middle school?
There's a team at the sixth grade team at the middle school.
In the Shawshene as well.
That we've extended the pilot to, as well as the third grade team.
Yeah, so it's growing, you know. And it's the kind of a thing where it isn't like you're not going to walk in the school and see it. Like, you don't see this. This isn't posters on the walls and things like that. It's a different way of thinking, and it's a different way of interacting with children. You know, when they get themselves in situations that that they might struggle with, and they're kids, they're not trying to screw up, they might just need some help, so. But with that, like, we weren't all going to stand and talk, but any kind of questions you guys have, I mean, I got, like I said, a great team here, so fire away.
Mrs. Monish?
So are you doing this with all kids for all situations, or only like repeated behavior that needs it?
Great question. We really started out this year with like targeted students, So right now, I think if I actually made a list of all the kids we've interacted with, maybe 11 or 12 or something like that, that's I think that number is in my head about that. We've had about that many conversations. But again, like, with a range of kind of degree of difficulty and degree of seriousness, but there are some children that just need like that little bit of help, So, and I should say, thanks for asking the question, because we haven't done it just with the students that are in these particular classrooms. We've identified students like in the building that need the support. So it isn't like, just the kids in these rooms got the benefit of this. It was, who do we think? Go ahead, Eddie, yeah.
It also changes the perspective that you take sometimes with a child. So we may have only formally done it with 11 to 12 students, but the students have a very varied background that they come from, and you can't pretend to understand what's happening at home or in their own minds. So it kind of gives you, the training gives you a perspective to take that you may not normally take. As adults, we kind of sometimes say, oh, you're 10, how bad can you really have it? You know what I mean? Let's just move on. But it really changes your whole perspective as a teacher, so that you can kind of deal with small issues as they arise in your classroom before they become major problems.
And just to follow up on that again, what we're looking towards next year is like a PBIS kind of a basic ground level system, in the school, which is, okay, here's expectations, basic ground rules for everybody. And then, the CPS almost becomes like a tier 2, tier 3 type intervention for the students who just can't, they can't function in that basic level. So you target it. And that's why you don't see it when you walk in the building. It's just one of the, there are students now who just have better relationships with certain ones of us, because we've had those conversations and stuff like that, and they talk to us in a different way, It's pretty cool when it happens. It's kind of neat, Thanks.
I think I've spoken highly about this, and I was excited that it was coming to our district, and I want to thank you for the dedication and the time, because I know what the work on the front end is like, and I think at this point, you all realize that it's going to save you so much time at the end. But I think besides establishing that relationship, which I think is the first and most important piece, it also teaches students the skills of advocacy and communicating, and I think that is one of the additional plugs that I have to say about this program, and I can't wait for it to actually be integrated throughout the district, because I really think it benefits not just some students, it benefits all students, and even work relationships within the schools. And I just want to thank you, because I know that because I myself I've gone to see Ross Green speak multiple times and read all of his books, and it is an undertaking, because it's just a training of one's mindset. So I just want to thank you and commend all your staff for doing so.
We're all very different. Like when you look at each one of us, we all have our own styles and stuff like that, and we've really gelled as a team in a different way, which is like a very professional way, which is it's kind of profound. Kristen, go ahead.
Thank you for that. We certainly appreciate it. And I think that's a really good point you make about, kind of prompting students to advocate for themselves, because I think we can all agree that since going through this process with these particular students, they are initiating that now. They are seeking out, could we talk about this? Could we have a conversation? So it's really nice that now they're initiating it, because as we all know, sometimes there are some underlying issues with students that we're not even aware of, because they're not presenting right in front of us. So it's really nice that we've had that experience, and like you said, I think that's sort of like an important side benefit that we didn't really see coming. I think we thought it was always going to be initiated by us, so it's nice to see them take that role.
Thank you.
And as the name says, it is a very proactive method or model. And so, we talk about students that have repeated behaviors. The goal of this is to come up with a solution so that the behavior doesn't occur, as opposed to come up with a solution for what do we do when the behavior occurs, which I think we can get, a lot of times we get into that pattern of, okay, when this occurs, what are we going to do? It's no, what are we going to do to prevent that from occurring? And in doing that, we do have more students who are being proactive themselves, and when they notice something small come up, they'll come to us as opposed to waiting for something repeatedly to happen.
I was just going to ask, out of curiosity, what has the response been from parents?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think we would all agree that for the most part, the response has been favorable. It's a mindset change for parents, just like it is for us. And speaking as a parent in the district, it has affected, the way I interact with my oldest child at home. I like how you're chuckling at that.
We all know your oldest child as well.
Yes. Some of you will know her soon. So it's a mindset change for them as well. So I think initially that was a little bit of a struggle for parents because I do it too, even being on the other side of the desk. A lot of times you do look to teachers, well, how are you going to fix this with my child? How are you going to solve this with my child? So I think it's hard for parents at first to be like, why are you asking them what they want? Especially if that's not your parenting style. But once you really get into the process and you're able to see those improvements, parents have been pleased because now those conversations are happening at home and they're seeing their child bring things to their attention that they may not have prior.
To my knowledge, we did not have, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we did not have any parents decline to have us work with them in this model, to my knowledge.
Because we had to ask permission
Yes,
because of the
especially
pilot.
for recordings.
Yeah.
We had to ask written permission for the recordings, and we did not have any parents decline, to my knowledge, so.
But I think the toughest part for all of the adult staff and parents is the fact that this isn't a magic pill, and I think that that's really the key, is that when we start this with a student, it's not going to be an overnight, okay, we've fixed this problem, and I think that can get a little frustrating and can be hard to explain to all of the adults involved in the situation, ourselves included, reminding ourselves that, okay, this is an ongoing thing that we really need to work on. We're not going to solve this overnight. So for the most part, yeah, I would agree that we've had really favorable interactions with parents and feedback from parents. But it is something that we constantly have to remind all the adults involved that this we're not going to solve this overnight.
And it presents like some of the obvious challenges, which is it can look like you're not doing anything about something that's going on, but I think we've built up some credibility, by the way we've kind of stuck with this, and we certainly have had some situations that could have become ugly, for lack of a better term, and this team has taken that time and worked closely with students and the parents I've had to communicate with and stuff like that have recognized, okay, just give us a chance to try this. Give us a chance. It might not look like it because he's not missing recess or not sitting outside the office, not these visible things, doesn't mean that we're not working with it, So, so I think it's been, like I said, it's not without challenges, and it's really important that we stay consistent, which is why we agreed as a team that even though the pilot, the 20-week session kind of ended, we're meeting every Tuesday for the rest of the year. This is ongoing for us because it's just we can sit, we can talk about cases, we can refresh each other and stuff like that. Again, and it offers the opportunity for the staff to come to us as well. So,
excuse me.
Yeah.
How are the children selected for this program? Is it part of an IEP? Or is it
no, a great question. It's not part of any program in that sense. It's really this is more of a strategy for us to use as professionals in dealing with students who present us with challenges. So what we're looking for are, we all know, I can list off 15 kids, that okay, these are the kids we have to pay attention to because they struggle in different ways, for whatever reason. So, and we kind of looked at that and said, okay, we kind of, paired ourselves up and matched up with kids and just started doing this, So it isn't something that's written into we're going to CPS this kid. It does, which is people think that, but it's not that. It's really just a different way of thinking about how we go about interacting with the kids. Does that
Yeah,
helpful?
That's fine.
Sure.
And as Heidi mentioned a few minutes ago, we kind of joke and say, well, we have formal CPS for some kids, but we have informal CPS because it really does change the way you're having conversations with every student now. You know, just the way you present a question to them if something even minor is happening. So, you know, we have the kids that there are some major issues that we're kind of plugging away with, but then in general you have your day-to-day little things, but that's coming into play. And I think with the PBIS kind of becoming that tier 1, this is going to bump to tier 2, and then there is going to be a more formal, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would, you know, there'd be a little more of a sort of trail as to who really gets to that level, depending on the
What grades
situation.
is this?
Grade 4 and 5.
4 and 5.
4 and 5, yeah.
Is there any to go sooner?
It's being piloted right now in the
Oh,
Shawshene.
okay.
It's being piloted at the middle school as well. And I think the hope is to expand it, you know,
Correct, yes.
in
I think
a broader way, yeah.
part of the challenge here, as they've identified, is there is a mindset shift. And certainly at the younger grade levels, I think it's an easier mindset shift. I think the behaviors that kids present with and the challenges that we confront are a little more manageable than sometimes perhaps at a secondary level. And I think we know now that we have kids in grades 4 and 5 who have experienced this type of collaborative problem solving and proactive problem solving. So to have them now go to the middle school, we need to make sure that the middle school staff are ready to receive these children, because we don't want to undo what we've done by going back to plan A and having them say, well, wait a minute, when I was at the West, somebody talked to me about what was going on. So you want to promote that and spread that practice. But at the same time, as the kids are coming up as well, we want to grow the practice down and grow the practice up, recognizing that as we get up into the secondary grade levels, it does become a little bit more of a challenge for a mindset. Sometimes when you're engaging in Plan C for a particular behavior at the secondary level, there are questions of, well, isn't that student, by us taking a back seat on this particular behavior, aren't other students then going to say, okay, the rules just all went out the window and we can now, child wearing the hat, and you're putting that on a Plan C, does that mean all other students are now going to walk around with their hats? And so there's a lot of conversation and mindset shift and dialogue that needs to happen about how you're going to address those situations. So it is a practice that I think is best grown organically. I think that's what folks at the West have recognized, because they have people coming to them now from teachers who weren't involved saying, I have this child, could you CPS them? It's like, wait a minute, let's hold on. No, we're not applying medicine here, we're using the strategy. But they're becoming interested in learning how to do this, and that's how we think that this practice will best spread. We're fortunate in that Bethany actually went through a training last summer that the WEF paid for her to attend with Dr. Green, and will soon be able to actually be a trainer within the district. And we have another, Marissa Bellio, who Mr. Shaw mentioned, who also will hopefully be doing that training this summer. And so we hope to soon have 2 in-district certified trainers who can provide that coaching to staff in other buildings to spread this practice throughout.
One of the nice things about this program, too, that Ross shared with us when we first met with him is that while we're not all certified trainers under CPS, the official CPS, that the goal is that we now that we've gone through this training, we can go forward and start to train other staff members in our building and in the district. And he said that's really the goal of the pilot group, is to get a group of staff members proficient in this, so that we can then go forward in the district and train others, which is really nice that we have that.
And just on the parent piece, Ross Green has a book coming out, I believe, is it August or September that it's coming out? A book exclusively for parents to learn how to apply these strategies in their parenting. And we've already been in touch with his person who does all the scheduling to work on a date to have him come out to Wilmington Public Schools to do a presentation to parents. and at the same time, maybe get some book sales in as well. But I think it's a good combination. And to your point, I think the more parents understand and learn this and are reinforcing what we're doing here in the school, the faster this type of approach is going to take hold.
Consistency is key
Exactly.
to this piece, and that's why I think maybe I'm so anxious to see it spread through the middle school, through the lower schools and then middle school, so that that consistency is carried, all that hard work is, continued.
Thanks.
So, no, thank you.
No,
It's great.
was it helpful? I hope that was helpful.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments or concerns? No? I'll just share that our summer reading as a school committee this past summer was the book Lost at School. And I'll admit, I was a little skeptical as I was going through it as a parent and thinking, geez, I don't know. It kind of seems like we're giving too much away, and I feel like I need to pull back. But I've been excited over the course of the year, learning more about it, and certainly seeing the success that you folks have been having at the West is great to hear. So thank you for the efforts. I know it has taken a lot.
It's a fabulous team, so
that's
yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. Look
Thanks,
forward to
everybody.
hearing more.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I think our next item of business, we're going to be hearing from the Woburn Street Principal, Mr. Strasnick, and our gentleman, Mr. Ruggiero, are going to be presenting information on the work of the District Safety Committee, giving us an update, and I believe there's a PowerPoint presentation as well.
Yes, hopefully I can get that. Do I need to move this? Or?
You're good. Dan, she'll pick you up. Is Lieutenant Sensabaugh joining you?
Oh, he's hiding in the back.
If you would like to come down, Lieutenant Sensabaugh is more than welcome to come down and join us. It's a seat right next to me, right here, or at Paul's table.
Just by way of introduction, a huge thank you to Mr. Strasnick and Mr. Ruggiero for continuing to chair this committee. They began chairing it last year and have continued into this year. And what's exciting about this committee, as you can see from the presentation, is the cross-function, cross-building, cross-department collaboration that goes into this committee, which I think is the key to this success. And they've been doing a lot of great work, so I'll turn it over to them. And obviously, a lot of thanks to both the Wilmington Police Department, Lieutenant Sensabaugh, as well as our school resource officers, as well as Wilmington Fire Department as well, who've been obviously involved too.
Yeah, so thank you for having me tonight. It's definitely, the last time I presented, it's definitely a different presentation now. I think we were still trying to figure a lot of things out when we first started. I will say it was messy, but in a good way. And the superintendent shared kind of my first slide, which is, just looking at all the people who are involved in this team, which doesn't include the people who were on the team last year. So there were some changes. And also I want to mention all these school-based safety teams. So a lot of these folks here would go back to their schools and kind of report back to their school safety teams and share some of the things that we were working on, brought things back, got their input, brought it back. So it's definitely been, it's been a great experience for me, being able to see people from pre-K all the way up to high school, working with the police and fire department, working with CARES. So it's definitely what I would call more a community effort than a team effort. It's definitely a community. So really thankful for all these people and all the work they've done, which is a lot. So at the beginning of the year, kind of at the end of last year, we set some goals for ourselves. Wanted to kind of challenge ourselves, but also make it realistic, because we want to have a product. We don't want to just kind of be throwing things around. We want to, get stuff done. So we wanted to have a document, whether we call it a flip chart or a safety guide, whatever it is, by the end of this year, so that we can put it in the hands of staff. So any staff member who gets it, understands it, can follow it. And at the end of last year, we identified a number of, we call them HTIs, hazards, threats, and incidents. So we wanted to kind of take the ones that we thought we would unfortunately experience before others, so that we could be prepared. And actually, a funny story, I had a call over to Paul today, and I said, Paul, I'm pulling out my flip chart because we had a pipe burst, which is one of the HDIs. I said, I'm going through the protocol, Paul. I said, I'm calling the superintendent or designee, and you're the designee. So it worked. We got it taken care of. And then also, we've been talking even before last year about kind of creating some, whether we call them safety buckets or backpacks or whatever it is, just so each classroom, anywhere a student would be, receiving instruction or services, office, to have some kind of safety resources there in case there was, an unfortunate incident. So I'll kind of talk about these things through the presentation. So where are we right now? We are in the final stages of kind of finishing up this safety document. We've been meeting throughout all last year, all this year. Every month we've been meeting as school-based safety teams, kind of going through editing and re-editing. But the great thing is we've been, the last time we went through the whole thing, it was, I don't want to say it was quick, but everybody was like, yep, this makes sense, yep, this makes sense, which, if you have people from pre-K to high school, having it so it makes sense for everybody can be a challenge. But we felt pretty good with our kind of final, it wasn't our final meeting, but our final meeting to really go over the edits and final pieces. And then the three of us met over vacation for a few hours just to kind of touch up and finalize some things. So this should be done officially by the end of this year, which we're really excited about. We had a little situation with creating the safety buckets. One of the staff, Alyssa from the Shawsheen School, who kind of forefronted or took hold of the safety bucket thing, is out having a baby. So we got a little sidetracked with putting the buckets together, but we're still waiting for some of the resources to come in for the buckets. So I just want to say congratulations, because I think she's having the baby now. So
she didn't have it at the school.
No,
which
no.
would have been covered in the chart.
No, we didn't actually having a baby. That's actually not in there.
Well, in this district,
It's not in the chart?
It may be helpful.
That's-
You have to go through so many maternity leaves a year.
That's in volume 2. That's next year.
Okay.
We'll have that. Yeah. We'll just there'll be no designee in that one. It's called the superintendent, yes. But we have, she's done a ton of work getting buckets donated, and we've each gone to our packs and asked for different things, and I'll show you a slide that kind of contains all the different things. And the packs have been very supportive. When they hear it's about school safety, they're like, yeah, what do you want us to do? So so they've been very supportive as well. So these are I'm not going to read them all, but these are the different ones that we kind of agreed on last year that we wanted to have included in this document. Obviously, there'll be things that come up year after year. This is, a living, breathing document, so if we need to edit and change things, add things in, take things out, we'll be able to do that. And as you can see, pipe burst should be up there. There it is, pipes burst,
Was
yes.
that added today?
No, that's been in there. That one is in there. I moved it to the top of the list, though.
He created the emergency to test it.
Yeah,
He's
I
excited.
did. So I just wanted to share one with you today, which is, we can't obviously share all of them because there are some things that we need to kind of keep in-house so that, the bad people don't kind of see what we're going to do. But we thought we could share one, which is extreme weather, as you can tell by the pictures. So for each HTI, for each hazard, threat, or incident, we have we call a response. So when the event happens during the incident, these are the steps or these are the things we're going to do. We wanted to make sure that we identified everybody, so staff, administration, anybody that would be in the building or would be responsible for responding to something. Sometimes it'll say, maybe, I don't know if it's on the next slide, it might say staff will, and then wait to hear from principal. So we just wanted to put that in there just so they're like, what do I do, what do I do? Just wait to hear and go from there. So this is just an example of a response we would do in the event if there's extreme weather that maybe just happened all of a sudden. As you can see too down here, there's an Appendix A, Appendix B. We didn't want to put in each one, evacuate the building, and this is how we evacuate. That's too much. What we did is created an appendix for evacuation. We created a appendix that is a general list of what to do, but then each school or each building is going to also include what their exact evacuation plan is, because what we do at Woburn Street obviously is very different than what they do at the Shawshene. So that's going to be, that's part of this process, is getting all that stuff in there. Yes?
Mrs. Kane.
That just made me think, yesterday I was able to go to the north to the library. They had their book day. So what we don't have on here is if there's parents in the school or people that, I just want to suggest, I'm not sure if, you know, if that had happened yesterday, there were 4 of us parents in the library. And what I think that my main thing would be to say, oh, I have to get out of here. As a parent, being, I don't want to interfere here or something, so maybe you might want to slip in somewhere if there are parents in the building or adults that wouldn't normally be there, what they would do, who they'd listen to.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think one of the things part of this process too is actually going over this stuff with the staff and teaching the staff and asking them, do you understand what this means? But also letting them know, like, if there's volunteers in the building, like if you have a volunteer, you are responsible for that person. So it's almost like saying that they're, I don't want to say one of your students, but you're responsible for them. So if there's parents in the building, then we're responsible for the parents. I think it might be a little bit overwhelming, and I'd be cautious about sharing this entire document, but I do agree that we should be aware of who's in the building and making sure that we account for everybody. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can they make like any announcements over the intercom or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, that's part of this. One of the things we talked a lot about is not speaking in code. Like we have a code red or we have a code blue. I'm going to have my cheat sheet of what the codes are. So being very deliberate, you know, when we communicate what is going on. So not just saying, we need to evacuate the building, but saying why. Maybe not saying that over the intercom, but letting the teachers know, we're going to be evacuating the building. Please check your email for specific details or something like that. So and when we do the ALICE training, that's a lot too about being very specific, being very concise with what we say, so that there isn't any question about, well, what does that mean? Where do I go? Yeah. Anything else? And then each section too also has recovery and reunification procedures. And a lot of that is what do we do after the incident? Who contacts who? If we have to evacuate, what does that look like? That's something we're still working on, is that reunification. So after an incident or we have to evacuate to a new site, how do we, get the kids to their parents? And what does that look like? What are the steps? So that's something we're still also finalizing. And one of the things that we're going to be talking with the staff about too is what is the difference between a school safety team, the district safety team, crisis recovery team, so those are some of the conversations that we're going to have with the staff so that they understand what all these things mean. So here are safety buckets. I'm not really sure what color they are. I haven't seen them. But these are some of the first items that we kind of went to our PACs and said, these are some things, some basic things that we want to get them started with. And obviously if teachers or schools said, we could really use this, that's something that they can also add. We just kind of wanted to get this started. Again, it's been something we've been talking about for a long time, so to actually have this happening is great. And then what's next, like I said before, once we get this out to the staff, is to kind of train them and talk about what does this mean, making sure they understand in this situation, this is what you're doing. There's going to be a lot, and we get this all the time, well, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? There's always going to be what ifs. We're going to plan for it, like today. With the pipes burst, that procedure, and all of it didn't really work with what we had to do. One of the things that actually Scott brought up, which was a good idea, is this idea of like a relocation. So it's not, we're not evacuating the building, but we have to relocate in the building, like a temporary relocation. One of the other things we talked about too is it's called a reverse evacuation. So if people and teachers and kids are outside and we need them to come in, you know, we would say, okay, we need to do a reverse evacuate, like you need to get in the building. So again, these are some things that are kind of coming up as we're doing this. So we're hopeful we can get those things all in place. Again, like I talked about, having school-specific things around reunification and evacuations, that glossary about what are all these things, what's the difference between a lockdown, shelter-in-place, and ALICE. We obviously want to work with CARES because some of these things we talk about during the school day, but we also have kids before school and after school. Well, what happens if something happens then? So we want to make sure that these things apply to them, and if we have to tweak anything for them, then we can do that. And then, again, what we talked about before is there's this, you know, many districts have what's called an operations manual. That's kind of the big binder. That's something we obviously don't want to give to staff because that's too overwhelming, but more so for district leaders around just who's doing what, you know, kind of on the bigger level. And that's something we're going to be working on moving forward. Templates for our Connect 5 system. I know the middle and high school unfortunately have some already, probably for bomb threats and things like that, but we want to make sure that we have some in place because what happens is we spend a lot of time as principals typing these things up and trying to, you know, it takes, you know, this just one for the pipes burst that I sent home to the families. I was typing up, I was sending for edits, you know, so some things if we can just get them, you know, like a boilerplate and say this is, you know, and then put specifics in, it would save a lot of time. And then something that we've already done, you know, with the safety buckets is I think we got them from, was it Home Depot? Home Depot, but also partnering with other community resources for other things, like if we have to evacuate, you know, and spend a long time somewhere, can we get food for the kids? You know, who in the community can help us with that? So those are things moving forward that we're going to be looking to do. So I think that was my last slide. Yes. Any questions?
Yeah, when you communicate that to the staff and when you've got the how are you doing it? Is it part of a professional day or is it an after-school meeting with staff or you're doing in increments? How is everyone kind of coming on par with the new changes and procedures?
That's a good question. I think that's something that we're going to talk about. You know, when we look at next year, we want to, you know, we're going to try and plan out what are we doing during our CIT days? What are we doing? You know, I don't want this to be something where everybody's planned everything, then we say, oh, by the way, we have to do this. So how can we work this in to the schedule? One of the things, again, Scott's really smart. I'm glad he's with us. He had another really good idea, excuse me, which was before we actually finalize this document, is to give it to teachers and say, just look through this. Does this make sense? Do you understand what this is? Because to us, it makes sense. To the district committee, it makes sense. But to the teachers who haven't been working on this for 2 years, it might not make sense. So that was a good suggestion to even just do that to get started. And then we can talk about what the other building principals about, so how are we going to roll this out with teachers and, you know, what is that going to look like? So we'll get there.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
In addition to this, and just information, we wrote a couple grants last year for two-way radios, and they've all been distributed. We got a bunch for each school with Scott and Deputy Chief Donovan from the fire department kind of worked together. And so we've distributed the two-way radios to the school so they can communicate within the building. One radio per building has direct connection to police and fire dispatch. And I tested those, and it works anywhere within the town. If and when more funding becomes available, we had bid this as a larger project where ultimately the town, we need repeaters and different things so that the radios, right now we can talk within a school. Roman House could probably talk to the high school, but we can't talk across schools yet because of distance and we don't have repeaters and so forth. But part of the project, again, if we get funding, will be throughout the town have repeaters and so forth so that, you know, the high school could talk to the middle school or the Roman House could talk to the north through their two-way radio if need be. The police the one radio per school that connects to the dispatch works, because the police have repeaters throughout the town, and we're on that frequency for that particular channel. So, but that kind of dovetails into what, again, safety and so forth.
Can I just ask where that is located?
Where what is?
The radio.
The radio that in
The
each school?
principals.
Okay.
Each principal and the superintendent have the one radio that can get directly to, the two-way radio
I
directly to
just
the.
didn't know if, God forbid, if there was an issue with the principal, and forgive me, I'm just going
Yeah,
back to
I mean,
Newtown,
Mhm.
that there would be
Mhm.
access,
Mhm.
that, front desk staff, forgive me, I'm not sure what that's the front line,
I mean, I would assume that the principal
Okay,
would
and not
make
to
sure
divulge too much
someone would
information,
know.
but I was just curious that, in light of the unexpected.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, for me, this is the first step. But honestly, if there's something going on between all the cell phones that we have in a building, I'm sure there's gonna be phone calls out and they're gonna know. It's just that first initial contact
Yeah.
can be a lot quicker. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
This is kind of a topic that's always been
Yeah.
on the forefront with just education in the nation today, and it's,
It's a what if.
it is, and it's a
Yeah.
shame that we're
It's a shame
houses
we have
of
to talk about
education
it.
and not of
Yeah.
jail, and I think the videos that we've seen in the past too are still etched clearly in my mind too, so, but thank you very much.
I have a question, a little bit different, it's all the same, but AEDs, do we have one in each school? And are they available for, like, the games that we go to? Do they travel with, like,
I'm not sure about that. That's more like the high school level, but I know in all the buildings we have them, and we're well aware of where they're located.
And they're, because, my son, goes to school and the Shawshene, and, I wasn't sure if, like, the coaches there were trained on them, and they knew exactly where they were in case one of the students, while at the school, because I've been there on weekends and there's, nobody's there. So I'm just wondering if the coaches are trained on how to use an AED.
Yeah, as far as the coaches go, I'm not
The coaches
sure.
in terms of the youth organizations
Yeah.
are outside of our purview. And they don't typically, my understanding, have access to the actual school. And the AEDs, for example, at the Shawshene, I know those fields are very well used, that AED is inside. It's probably near the gymnasium, I would imagine. And the certain staff have been trained, and the nursing staff certainly are aware of that. But the coaches for the youth organizations, they are employed by those youth organizations, so we really don't have any sort of jurisdiction about that. In terms of our athletic coaches at the high school, I think you're seeing more and more that they're being trained in CPR, EpiPen administration, AED administration, so that there's probably, and we also have a athletic trainer who is available as well. So, and there are multiple AEDs at the high school, so for our own athletics programs, those are available. But I don't know that the youth organizations have gotten to that level where they have portable AEDs that they typically have available for those
I mean, it would
youth
just be a shame
sports.
that if something did happen, there was an AED, but nobody knew how to use it. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. I've
Yeah, I
seen
mean,
it, but
for
it would just be
for our staff in the schools, we have a pretty good, not everybody is, we can't require that, but little by little, people are becoming more and more interested in being trained for our own employees.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just saying, because they're using the schools, the actual buildings are inside the building, that, if somebody had an issue, it would be nice if somebody knew how to use the equipment that's there or had access to it.
yeah, for us, I mean, for a non-Wilmington Public Schools employee, so if it was Wilmington Youth Basketball, we would not be in a position to train them on AED administration, but Wilmington Youth Basketball could reach out, I'm assuming, to the fire department probably, or even the health department, or I'm sure even our nurses would be willing to work with them as well to get trained.
I know the recreation department in Wilmington offers training. We've done it at the police station. We offer free citizen CPR training. Each officer that's assigned to the schools, the SROs, they all have AEDs in the cruisers as well. They're trained on the ones that are in the building, and obviously, to your point, during a sporting event that may be after hours or during, a weekend where the school may be closed, every police and fire piece of apparatus in Wilmington has an AED on it. That's even administrative, fire lieutenants, fire trucks, ambulances, police cruisers. So there's really, there's dozens of AEDs available throughout the community and located in the other municipal buildings too. So even if there was a practice near the town hall, there's one in there. There's one over at the senior center, things like that. So the town's really done a nice job with the school nurses as well as the Department of Public Health within Wilmington to really make AEDs a goal to get them out there in as many buildings and as many hands as possible and increase training as well.
And I'll say too, just on the school side of it, I know that there's been a couple times where a teacher's called down and said, can you get the nurse, there's an emergency. Now, they really haven't been emergencies, but immediately our nurse grabs her go bag, which has one in it, and she's gone. That's happened a couple times where it's actually just been a student kind of getting sick in the classroom, but when she hears emergency, it's it's quicker that she has it because she's gone. She's the first one to go, so.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great presentation, very informative. Okay, moving right along, I think our next item of business is our fiscal year 16 quarterly financial report.
Yes, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Ruggiero, who will provide you with an update and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. As you can see from the report, our total appropriation for FY16 is $36,197,557. Through the middle of April, we've expended or encumbered $36,100,777.46. So currently, we have a balance of $96,779. I'm confident we'll be fine at the end of the year. During the next couple of month and a half, we actually start to pour over. In the reports you have, there's an encumbered column, if you will. Those are all purchase orders or salary that's been encumbered. So we'll now go through that in detail. We'll contact everyone who's set up a purchase order to make sure they in fact are intending to purchase the items. Sometimes that the purchase orders are put together in July, just so that they encumber them. And then, but nothing's been truly ordered or received yet. So we'll go through that and unencumber funds where we deem fit, where the money's not going to be spent, as well as some payroll type adjustments that we'll do. So we'll be fine as we approach the end of the fiscal year. No issues.
Any questions? No? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, this is a good one. At this point, we have used 2 snow days. I want to knock on wood because with what we've had this year, you don't know. But assuming no more snow days will be necessary for the remainder of the school year, the 180th school day for grades 1 through 12 will be June 17th.
That's correct. It did snow in Portland yesterday, but that's far enough north. So yeah, well, all things being, I received notification today from our private weather service that it usually goes November 1st through April 30th. So will be discontinued, shut off as of that. So it's a happy day. So. That's always a happy day. So yes, barring the unforeseen, we typically will actually ask the school committee to approve the last day of school, which June 17th is a Friday. Obviously, certainly is convenient for a number of reasons. So Friday would be a half day for students. So.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve June 17th as the last day of school. Mr. Bjork, second.
I'll offer that as a motion.
Mr. Talbot, all those in favor? Oh, we're missing Mrs. Kane. Okay, I think it's okay. Okay, our policy subcommittee met on April 11th and reviewed and discussed a handful of policies. At our meeting tonight, it's going to serve as our first reading of those. Do you want to introduce those?
Absolutely, yes. So 6 policies before you. Most of them are edits to existing policies, relatively straightforward, not extensive. Number 2, procedure ACR, is basically more of a procedure, regulation that is pursuant to policy AC, our non-discrimination policy. So our non-discrimination policy needed to be updated because gender identity had been added as a protected class some time ago, and the policy just needed to be updated to include gender identity. So the changes you see there are gender identity. I will also change the revision adopted to, it's obviously not tonight, it'll be at our next meeting, so we'll make that change for our second and final reading, but that's the only change to the non-discrimination policy. Did you want to take these one at a time?
Do we need to take them one at a time?
Don't have to, I can take them as a group. The second policy that's related is the procedures. We did not have, as a school district, discrimination and harassment grievance procedures, and so we use some of the model templates out there for procedures, and given the importance of this and the fact that both federal and state guidelines require the existence of these procedures, we felt that it would be important for the school committee to actually vote and adopt these procedures pursuant to the policy, which is AC. So the policy's AC, regulations are AC-R, and it covers all of the various categories, and it lays out very clearly the definitions, the statement that is obviously prohibited, as well as retaliation, how an individual would go about making a complaint, what the obligation is of the officials at the school department who would handle the complaint with respect to investigation and follow-up and reporting, and identifies the positions that are the district's civil rights coordinators. It also has an Appendix A and Appendix B, which are actual forms that would be completed by an individual filing a complaint, either somebody who is a witness to a complaint or somebody who is the target or victim of harassment or discrimination.
Okay, so we would
Just
be.
one quick question. Is this part of the student handbook? Is it in there?
There are references in the student handbook to those procedures that are required, and so the student handbooks, to the extent that these procedures might not already be covered, would need to be updated for next year to incorporate these.
The gender identity and all that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Mrs. Burns?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I'll wait until you finish the policy
okay.
piece, sorry.
Okay. Any other questions? So I think we can safely take the first 2 as one unit. So we are moving to accept the first reading of policy AC, and we are moving to accept the first reading of procedure AC-R. We'll take that as a unit. Mr. Bjork, a second. Mrs. Bonish?
Yeah, I didn't know why we're voting if it's just the first reading, and the
Just
second reading we
accepting
come
the
up with
first.
okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, no, forgive me, it's a different chair, I'm just not.
I'm getting used to it too, believe me.
I'm sorry, forgive me.
No problem. So we're just moving to accept the first reading, and then, as been our practice, we will approve the policy at our next meeting? That sound consistent?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I had a move, Mr.
Second.
Bjork. I had a second from Mrs. Bonish. We're all good with those? Okay. Everybody good? Okay. So we can move on to,
Yes, student policies is somewhat related. It comes under the student section of the manual, section J. So related to the non-discrimination under student policy goals, there are references to non-discrimination or obligations, and so that too needed to be updated to include gender identity as one of the protected classes outlined, and that really is the only change to policy JAE.
JAE. Okay. Any questions at this point? Okay, so this is our first reading of policy JA-E. I think we can take this one, because we have 2 that are related somewhat. Anybody want to make a motion to accept the first reading of policy JA?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Burns. Second, Mrs. Kane, thank you. All those in favor? All right, great. Thank you.
The Next policies are somewhat related. One is related to student travel, and there has been some confusion or lack of clarity with respect on student travel policy. The policy had read that teachers and other school staff are prohibited from soliciting for privately run trips through the school system and in the schools. And what exactly that meant and what the parameters was the subject of some discussion and confusion. So we felt it would be appropriate to clarify that by being specific about what it is that is not permitted. And so added that language around advertising not permitted. That is also consistent with policy KHB, advertising in schools, that Wilmington Public School employees who are participating in privately run sponsors, they need to submit the proper conflict of interest disclosure forms if they're getting a financial benefit. So oftentimes if folks are chaperoning trips, they will receive either a discount for the trip or a trip at no cost. So we just want to make sure that they're providing the appropriate disclosure, and that is covered also under policies JBEA, staff ethics / conflict of interest, as well as GBEBC, gifts to and solicitations by staff. So those are consistent with the language in those policies that are cross-referenced below.
Questions?
I'll offer the motion.
Wonderful, thank you.
Seconded.
Mr. Talbot, second. All those in favor of accepting the first reading? That's all of us, Kim, thank you.
With respect to field trips, we thought it would be important to clarify who it is that we identify as being appropriate chaperones for our field trips, that only parents or guardians of students who are participating in the field trip or current employees of Wilmington Public Schools will be permitted to serve as chaperones for any school-sponsored field trip. This isn't private sponsored, this is school-sponsored field trips. And that exceptions can be made by the superintendent with prior written approval, and outlines that exceptions will really be reserved for those cases where a sufficient number of chaperones might otherwise not be available and might hinder the ability of the field trip to happen. That being said, all chaperones obviously have to be Corey cleared. I will actually add in at the next reading the revised adoption date as well.
Point of procedure. Can I just inquire, I'm sorry, because it's, if you wouldn't mind entertaining me, why are we voting to accept the first reading when the measure, my understanding, and it's my lack of understanding, is that at the second reading is when it's accepted, and that this is the first reading, so that anybody who, I'm just looking for point of procedure as to why we are voting on the first reading. It's not clear to me.
Yeah, typically you accept a first reading so that the record shows that you did conduct a first reading and then a second reading.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So you're not approving, you're just accepting that you've done the first reading.
I just wanted to, okay, understand. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Okay, we have one more.
Did we, I don't think we accepted that yet.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you for keeping me on track. Okay. Mrs. Kane is moving to accept the first reading of policy JOA. Can I have a second? Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? Okay.
And the last policy, fiscal accounting and reporting, the change to this policy reflects essentially the current practice. As I've gone through the policy manual chapter by chapter, I recognize that the current practice is that the superintendent, and typically as we've done tonight, the school business official will submit to the school committee the financial statements on a quarterly basis versus a monthly basis. So I thought it was important to have the policy reflect what our actual current practice is, so that we didn't be accused of not meeting our obligation under policy. But in light of some concerns that have been raised with respect to some financial challenges in other districts, to assure the committee that obviously Mr. Ruggiero and I on a monthly basis are evaluating the status of the budget, and that's clearly called out here as an expectation as well.
Mrs. Burns?
I've been crunching on that new additive with regards to the superintendent and the director of administration. My thoughts are, not that it's a major die on the sword kind of thing, but it's just, I don't know, it's something it's catching me. I see it more as a best practice and a protocol between like employer and employee that should, have expectations, and I don't know how, who, it seems to be like a negotiation between the superintendent and director of administration, which I think could be clarified with regards to the procedure and protocol of operation, per se. But I just don't know if we need to see it. My concern is summer's coming, vacations, if one person takes a vacation, another one takes a vacation, something unexpected like pipe bursts come up, and you don't meet for, let's say, a month and a half, that's out of compliance with protocol, and you can't say, oh, well, taking under the considerations, we'll let it go this time because of but you can't when it becomes policy, and I kind of just like to see the superintendent have that flexibility of the unexpected should arise. And I think I may not be clarifying it as well as I'd like to articulately, but I just don't know whether it should be a part of policy as opposed to protocol and procedure at operations.
Yeah, the recommended insertion came actually as a result of events that transpired in a neighboring community last year, and the fact that there was nothing in writing that established what the procedure would be for the review of financials by the superintendent, and left this lack of clarity that kind of tripped people up when it came time to addressing some, was the superintendent meeting their obligation under the policy or not? And the lack of clarity led to exactly that, lack of clarity.
Well, and I think maybe that I might have just a not as broad familiarity with respect to that. I see that falls under the superintendent, so that's why I feel that's under the superintendent role as to us.
When the superintendent just again for background purposes, when those events occurred in that neighboring community, and the school committee attempted to hold the superintendent accountable for what transpired, mm-hmm. There was nothing that they were able to sort of point to as establishing what the practice would be, what the expectation of the committee was with respect to regular review of the financials. And that led to some, it matters less to me, but my job as a superintendent is to recommend policies that address things that have been of concern. So the issue is, if you don't create the expectation and something happens, then I as a superintendent can say, well, you never made it clear to me that I was expected to review these financials on a regular basis.
Can I offer this too? I think the language is loose enough. It says on a monthly basis. It doesn't say on the 15th of every month, that kind of thing. So if situations happen, and it doesn't happen when scheduled, it can happen the following week. I think it's loose enough but tight enough at the same time so that it's certainly more than once a quarter. It's once every month.
Yeah, from my perspective, if the committee desires to remove it, it matters less to me. I'm sort of advocating in some ways against myself here by just giving you the protection that in the event that there is ever a question about whether I was reviewing the financials, that the committee has made it very clear what their expectation is.
Thank you very much.
Any other? Mrs. Keene?
I think I'm misunderstanding this whole conversation. I thought that what MJ meant was, if the two of you were working on this and there was an expenditure that had to come in the middle of that time? Is that what you were saying?
No, it's stated here, and it may be my interpretation of it, which may be a little shorter, is that to meet once a month regarding it, if, for instance, something unforeseeable happens,
right.
Vacations, pipe bursts, where that meeting doesn't occur, that it may be a month and a half between. I just didn't want that flexibility to take unexpected circumstances of events to go against policy per se. If it's a month and a half, monthly means within a 4-week time. But I just wasn't, maybe I'm seeing it too black and white, so that's, and again, I must say, I may misinterpret it a little too.
Some months are 5 weeks.
Yeah.
That's true.
January.
Not February. No, but that's what I just want to ensure, that it wasn't with the best intentions inadvertently.
Well, I guess that leads to my question is actually, are we able with this, which I'm assuming we are, to take care of the problem financially? And then when you meet in the month, you solidify it, but Paul takes care of, if the pipe bursts, we just don't wait for a month to do something about it, we take care of it. You have the ability to do that under this policy still, right?
I think you're talking more about if something delays our ability to meet within a 4 or 5 week period
Just
to
to
review the
review, not to- yeah.
financials, not that we can't take care of an emergency if it comes up as an
Oh.
expense,
Oh,
but
okay.
more, what
Yeah,
if,
delaying
what
the
if,
meeting.
you know,
I'm sorry,
Paul's
I
on
honestly
vacation
didn't
for
get
2
it.
weeks and I'm on vacation for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
First of all, I can pretty much assure you that will never happen. But, you know, would we miss that 4 week period in there before be out of compliance with the policy? And I mean, that's up to the committee. I mean, like I said, I'm in some ways, you know, advocating for something that puts an expectation on me. That's up to you to decide whether that's an appropriate
I
expectation.
just also don't want to be able to monitor and enforce the policy. You know, I just wanted to make sure you're, that it's not going to, you know, cut you off for something unexpected. That was my only intent. It's just for consideration, just a thought, no worries. At this juncture, anyway.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there a way to word it so that it's not really, it's for informational purposes, like to start the sentence with, for informational purposes, this is what you'll do, rather than having it actually be
The date, the time frame.
what?
And basically take out on a regular, take out the monthly part.
Yeah, I mean, because I understand what she's saying, I just.
I have to say, I don't think it's, I don't think it's a bad thing to expect that on a monthly basis, these would be reviewed. I really don't.
But what are we gonna do to them if they don't?
I think like any,
Hold the feet to the
CPS.
fire.
We'll do the CPS strategy.
I think like anything,
Plan A.
it really comes down to communication between the superintendent and the chair, and if there were extenuating circumstances, then communicating, saying, just to let you know, because there are things that happen, there are things written in policy that sometimes require a waiver, if you will, and then that happens through conversations.
We good? Okay. So
Thank you.
I will take a motion to accept the first reading of policy D1, financial reporting. Mrs. Bonish, second, Mrs. Key. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. I think we got through.
Yes, I did have one other thing, it's not really policy related, because I thought initially it was policy related. It's not actually policy related, because I recognize that there's actually already a policy in place, but I just wanted to apprise the committee that, currently the enrollments at, the kindergarten enrollment at the Wildwood School is at 141, which is what they're currently at, and the enrollment at the Boutwell is 97. Now, Wildwood, like I said, currently has 141 for this current year. Typically, between now and the time school starts, each school picks up on average 20 students. If the Wildwood picks up another 20 students on top of the 141, we will have an issue. We will have not have enough space. Staffing won't be so much an issue, because Boutwell right now at 97 would be at 5 classrooms. They currently have 7. If they picked up 20, they would go to 6. That 7th classroom would still be available. That staffing would be available. So you have a policy already in place around assignment within the district that allows the superintendent the flexibility to reassign students. We may be, and we will be notifying kindergarten parents that if enrollments continue to increase, we may be in a situation where we have to spot redistrict students from the Wildwood district to the Boutwell district. So I put that out there as just heads up. We're going to communicate this. We don't know if we'll have to do it. We're putting plans in place, including looking at where the students are currently and determining which of those students might need to be redistricted, and the decision is based in large part on the proximity of those households to the district line, as well as whether or not those students have siblings that are already at the Woburn Street and the north, because clearly we don't want to create a situation where you have to drop one child off on one side of town and the other children off on the other side of town. So siblings of students who are currently enrolled in those schools would be given preference to remain in the Wildwood district. Students who didn't would and live close to those would be identified as candidates to potentially redistrict. So we're going through that analysis process. We don't know if we'll have to use that, but it's something that clearly we're now confronting, and I don't know if it's a short-term bubble or it's something that we need to keep an eye on, but I think clearly, from my understanding in Wilmington Public Schools, there have been conversations about the potential need in the future to look at district lines for imbalance reasons. Not there yet, but to handle this situation for next year, we may need to do some movement. But we'll keep the committee apprised, but we're going to let those kindergarten parents know sooner rather than later that that's a possibility, so it doesn't come as a surprise if we have to invoke that.
The populations of Woburn Street and Shawshene seeing similar disparities?
They're about 100, no, not quite right, 70 students different. Woburn Street is in the 400s, mid-400s. Shawshene is about 373, 375. Similar, the north has more students than the west.
Mrs. Burns? Would you be anticipating maybe opening up, I know there's usually a line, Glen Road is usually the line. I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Kane could probably correct me, that previous years, there's been an option for some families to go to the alternate schools because of family and cousins, I think is how it was discussed. I didn't know if you were...
First do a sort of volunteer basis if you'd like to enroll in another, absolutely, that would be the first cut at the shift if that needed to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Great.
I thought it required a policy adoption, but it turns out you already have it.
You already have one, okay. One step ahead, okay. Public comment? No? Okay. Crickets? Any other reports? Mrs.
I'm
Burns?
just waiting to meet with Representative Maselli regarding next year's budget. He's delayed the meeting because it's coming, the budget was presented, it's coming up for Ways and Means, so there's amendments that will be added to it. So he felt that, and I agree with him, that just wait until those amendments have been put forth so that we have a more detailed conversation, more accurate conversation as to what's being proposed for next year. Simply that.
Correspondence, do we have any? No, excellent. Okay, future meeting dates? Oh, yes, we need to talk about subcommittee assignments. I think the last go around when we sent this out, we asked if there was any interest in moving around or changing. And Tom, obviously, you'll have an opportunity to raise your hand as well. Let's see. We had Kathleen was an alternate on the policy committee. And I think Mrs. Kane is raising her hand. She would like to step up and take Kathleen's spot. So right now we have MJ, Ginny Bonish is the chairperson, Mr. Bjork is on policy, and Mrs. Kane would like to.
I'd like to be on the policy. I don't know if anyone wants to
I'll step down
or
if you want.
switch.
You want to switch?
I'll be happy to step down.
MJ was quicker. I'm just kidding, I like that one.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
MJ.
No, no worries.
I mean, I can take over Catherine as a sub, as an alternate, I think, if you need one, I mean.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good. Great, thank you. Sick bank, we have Mrs. Kane and Mr. Mullis. Mr. Mullis is not here.
So he stays.
So he stays by default. Mrs. Kane.
I could either take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah,
How-
whichever. If someone would like to
How much
change
of a
it, then
time
that's fine.
commitment is that one?
We get a couple,
Yeah, 2 or 3
this
a
a year,
2 or 3 a
2
year.
or 3 a year, where we have to pull together the sick bank committee to meet on a request.
You should be available though at 3:15 or so, because that's when we have them. So that's
Okay.
part of the problem.
That's part of the issue, yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the issue.
Doesn't work for me personally. at this
On the
point.
other hand, I know from Mr. Mullis, because of his job, it's very
Yeah.
difficult for him to get there. I don't know if we only want one person on it, and I'd be glad to do it, but
I can generally be available for that time.
For 3:15? Okay, thank you, Mr. Bjork.
So am I going to take Peggy's spot then?
Thank you.
Oh.
Has Manny expressed an interest in not moving?
He didn't say, he didn't let me know anything.
That we know about.
How about if we wait till he comes, and if he wants to still do it, you take my spot, and if he doesn't, you can take his spot?
That sounds fair.
Okay.
Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee. We've got myself, Mrs. Kane, and Mr. Bjork.
Can I say, I think, I actually was giving this one a lot of thought. I got a lot out of our experience.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to continue to do it, but I think it's the kind of thing that it would benefit every member to be a part of that at least one year.
At some point, yeah.
So I'd be more than happy to step down and give somebody else a chance.
I'll take it on.
You want to jump on that one? Sure. Okay, that'd be a great way for you to get up to speed on that, Mr. Talbot. And I will, I'll stay chair of that. It should be much easier this year because I think we've got one under our belts and feel pretty comfortable with the process now.
Julie did a fantastic
Oh,
job.
yes, of course.
Yes, you did. But if somebody else wants to take it, I'm glad to let you do it, but I'll do it if nobody wants it. Not that they don't want it, I don't mean like that.
Of course we all do. Of course we all do.
I'm open here.
Okay. School committee representative to Wilmington Educational Foundation Board of Directors. I am going to remain on that. Kathleen Carroll was on that. I assume that she is going to stay on as a community member, and now she'll be able to actually vote. Our school committee representation is purely as a member ad hoc. We do not vote, but we certainly participate. They could use as much help as any of us want to join. So they meet on the first Tuesday morning of every month. At this point, they are sponsoring the STEM Fair tomorrow night. And after that, their activities for the school year will be wrapping down soon. So not too much of a time commitment otherwise. If anyone else is, and that one you can join pretty much at any time, too. Okay. School committee representative to the School Wellness Advisor Committee. That was Kathleen, so we need to, Mrs. Kane, thank you very much.
Can you do that, MJ?
I was going to inquire as to when does that typically meet?
I think it's during
after school once a month, I believe, at approximately 3:30 in the afternoon.
Do you know which day of the week?
I want to say it's a Wednesday, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just.
Do you think you can do it?
It depends which day of the week, because I work the middle of the week. So, but I'd like to, like to try to participate where I can, but I also want to make sure that I can be able to attend.
I know it's either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I'm thinking Wednesday, but I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have school committee representative to CPAC. And right now we have Mrs. Kane and Mr. Bjork as the alternate. We all good with?
Oh, I'm fine with that if nobody else, if somebody else wants. I'm open to it. I'll stay with what I'm doing, or I'll go to something else if you.
I have to abstain from it, so I would have taken it over for you.
I know it.
Okay.
Well, I'll stay on that
That's
then.
me now. Okay, the
Yep.
school committee executive session minutes, that's now me. Okay. High school building committee, we have Mrs. Kane and Mrs. Bonish.
Do you think we still need to
There's
carry
probably
this?
one more
Yeah, there's probably
meeting
one more.
before it's officially disbanded.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
I'd like to
probably
take that
happen
then.
And I think that'll probably happen in the fall.
Oh,
And then
okay.
then it'll be officially disbanded, and then it just sort of, everything reverts back to the permanent building committee.
Okay.
So you might as
Yep,
well
so it's-
see it through.
Oh,
and then-
definitely.
Yeah, see it
Yeah.
through, and then
Yep.
that responsibility will be done, thank goodness. Okay, handbook protocols subcommittee, Mrs. Burns, Mrs. Kane, and myself. We haven't done much in the past year or so, but things do come up and revisions are needed.
It's up to you.
Keep it as is. You okay with that?
Oh,
Yeah,
perfectly
okay.
fine, yes.
Good. Town Facilities Committee, Mrs. Bonish is plugging away at that, so keep that one. Keep that one as is, and the Educational Assistant Negotiation Subcommittee, Mrs. Kane and Mr. Bjork, I think Status quo there? Everybody good? And from time to time, other things do come up, so,
Can I ask about the legislative position that has been removed?
yes,
Yeah, we need to talk about that, yeah.
okay.
What was the discussion? I mean, I'm going to still do what I do, only
Right,
because I think it benefits and it increases my knowledge and be able to be able to make, I think, educated decisions. So have you removed it then, Chair Broussard?
I have not removed it. I
No,
think
I
at one point last year, we decided that we really wanted to focus on what we were doing as a community, so we didn't know if we needed it, but I don't know. I think that's something we should
Just
discuss.
wasn't aware of that conversation, so that's.
Okay,
that's
I think
fine.
maybe something we should discuss further as a committee. Okay.
Have to think about it.
Think about it a little bit, and maybe we can revisit it next meeting? That sound fair?
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause Mr. Talbot's just joining us, so he wasn't even aware of that? Okay. And I think that covers all of our subcommittees at this point. Okay, we didn't have any correspondence. Okay, future meeting dates and agenda items. We have a meeting on May 11th. That'll be our first meeting in May. And May 25th will be our second meeting in May. And I was just going to throw this out there for the community. May 17th from 7:30 to 9 o'clock at St. Thomas Church. There will be another community-wide discussion around substance abuse. This one is for parents, and I believe they're referring to it as hidden in plain sight. Give us all some education about what may be going on right under our noses.
I've heard that's a very impressive program, actually.
So that's one to keep aware of, and I think I'm certainly going to attend. And also, Amanda had sent out to us the exciting things that come up around graduating seniors. Mr. Talbot, we'll make sure that you get the list of what's up next, but we do have National Honor Society induction tomorrow night at 7 here.
And graduation on the 5th. Definitely put that one in your calendar. June 5th.
June 5th.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda.
Should I say May 5th? They're going to have the big band concert.
Oh, yeah.
Is it May 5th?
May 5th?
And it's going to be in the gymnasium?
Oh, the 5th is a Tuesday, right? Tuesday is the.
No, it's the Thursday. I thought it was Thursday.
There's a band concert and then there's the.
Oh,
strings concert.
Strings is
Strings is the
Tuesday,
3rd.
The 3rd.
And band is the 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Those are coming up. So.
Lots going on.
Vertical concert, so that's all grade levels, which is exciting.
Okay. And with that, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's the
Mrs.
first time in
Bonner.
9 years you've been able to offer that motion, Peggy.
Yay. Okay, all those in favor? Great.
Don't you get to bang the gavel?
Nice job, Julie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's right.
Gavel.